Welcome back. Let's start immediately as we do have a lot of questions and a lot of topics to discuss with my dear guest live here in the studio, our expert when it comes to energy, to oil and gas, I'm not going to say an engineer, but he is a geophysicist, and this is a very, very rare, if I would say, very distinguished specialty, but he is the one to be fit for answering all these questions regarding oil and gas. Mr. Salah Hafiz, former Vice Chairperson of the Egyptian General Petroleum Corporation, thank you very much for being with us,
Thank
sir.
you.
And I'm really honored to have you tonight. And let's start as we promised, or we agreed before being on air, that I'm going to ask only this very general question, because you do have the story from A to Z. Egypt was a net exporter, then a net importer, now self-sufficient, and we are trying to export again, and not only to export, but to turn into being a hub for oil and gas, trade for oil and gas, and to benefit from all the lessons we learned the hard way in the past period. Would you please elaborate?
Okay, let's start from the beginning. The gas was, the government used to own the gas if discovered while looking for oil. Mm-hmm. And this was not attractive for the investors, because we have to get outside the investors because the risk of exploration is very high.
Yeah.
So they take the risk, and then once they find commercial discovery, then we develop it together. Mm-hmm. So the gas was the property of the government, so they stopped going to the gas-prone areas. Mm-hmm. So we had to introduce a gas clause whereby we can treat oil like gas in the production sharing agreement. We succeeded in 1988. Then there was attraction for companies and investors to go to the gas-prone areas. Mm. Then the gas, at that time, the reserves was something like 5 trillion. Now it's close to 100 trillion. So it started from then.
At least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then we had to put price for the oil. Mm-hmm. The problem for the gas. The problem with gas is there is no stock market for to indicate the price of gas, not like oil, mm-hmm. like the Brent and West Texas Intermediate, mm-hmm. and the rest of it. And also logistically, it's not easy to store, not easy to move, mm-hmm. not easy to export. So we had this is the problem. And this is the main problem now of what's happening around us now. Mm-hmm. So we priced the gas based on fuel oil. Mm-hmm. This was okay for some time. Then we went to the oil, Gulf of Suez mix. Mm-hmm. It was not very attractive. Then by doing that, then went to the Brent, mm-hmm. and then put floor and ceiling. Mm-hmm. This was a growth in finding gas. Then all of a sudden, it stopped because of the ceiling, and the price of oil went, the ceiling was at 20 for the Brent, mm-hmm. $20, went to 150. Mm. This is the problem where we had to go back as importer of gas. Mm-hmm. So the gas grew in quantities and reserves and production until we were able to export it. Mm-hmm. So we built liquefaction plants, mm-hmm. and some pipeline, mm-hmm. LNG, mm-hmm. and some pipelines to take it outside the borders, mm-hmm. To Israel for one, and Jordan and other areas. Then all of a sudden the price of gas went up. The ceiling was an impediment for attracting investment. Then it stopped growing, mm-hmm. and this is where we had to go back
to stop.
Yep. We then introduced a very interesting way of marketing the gas, mm-hmm. of pricing the gas rather. This is based on the internal rate of return, mm-hmm. IRR. Mm-hmm. Okay, look for oil, look for gas. If you find commercial gas, the commerciality will be based on the price of gas. Mm-hmm. So we'll give you a formula to give you a fair price, still lower than the price outside, hopefully.
But it's going to be a win-win situation in a way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then discoveries were being made again,
yeah.
until we find Dhuhr.
This was my common question regarding Dhuhr as a turning point in this field at large. I mean, Where was that before?
It was always there for millions of years.
Yeah.
But us geophysicists or explorationists, we saw it, but it was not even Shell. They saw a feature in the seismic lines, you know, a tool that we use to look for oil and gas. But we could not interpret because it looked like something that was never found in the area before. So it was ignored or overlooked for a while until Eni came, and they were not committed to
The
drilling.
Italian giant Eni, of course. Yes.
It's Eni is the largest Italian company and one of the largest in the world. They came and acquired this area, and they were not committed to drilling wells in the first period. And they happened to have a slot for a sister company with a rig. They asked him to come to have a shot in the dark, we used to call it. And then they hit Dhuhr.
Yep.
So it was not by mere luck. I mean, there were speculation and assumptions, and then they decided to drill it, and it turned out to be a huge reefal body in the area, and the reef is a very good
Containing such
reservoir
amounts of gas,
containing full of gas.
This, I was going to ask about Dhuhr in specific, because why there is no more 10 Dhuhrs in Egypt? I mean, should we learn from this hard lesson? I mean, of course there are many others. How not to wait again and again for years and years to discover another Dhuhr?
Well, you start an area with very little data and technology, the available technology. With time, the grid becomes smaller. The knowledge, the information become more abundant. The technology develops. So you can find the very big ones like this, and then smaller ones, you know, you take time and generations to,
No, sir, because it's really amazing to find all the time the political leadership. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is keen all the time to receive the CEOs of many high-ranking giant companies in the field of exploration, in the field of energy, of oil and gas, like Eni, like BB. I mean, I'm not going to mention all names. And now it's a win-win situation for all, whether for the state or for those companies. Who has faulted that we are not marketing that much for investors to come and to invest in this field in specific in Egypt, because it's going to be a win-win situation, and the whole world is now looking for energy, for new sources.
It's not very accurate, this statement. Well, the investors, they come, I mean, they're very large companies. Their revenues are bigger than the revenue of Egypt.
Some countries, yes.
Of Egypt included. Shell, the revenue is higher than Egypt, for instance, you know. So they're very big company, public companies, so they have to make money. So they come taking a certain risk, like Shell came and invested almost $750 million in the area where Dhuhr was, and no discoveries were made. But President Sisi, the very important is the price of oil and the political stability. So the political stability was introduced with the achievements that were made lately in Egypt, politically and socially and everything. So this gave comfort for investors to come and invest, and the information about the price and the way they price the gas.
Yep.
So they started coming, but it's very expensive and time-consuming processes. Dhuhr, for instance, cost more than $11 billion to develop, and the depth of water was 1,500 meter. 1,500 meter, you have to only use robots, and the parts you use to develop a discovery like this, you can the meetings with with Sisi, with the oil companies, made them finish, complete the development of the field in a record time. So things like that happen, but investment and the time between finding a discovery and having it on stream, it's a very complicated
Sure.
and costly processes. So it's win-win if they make discoveries like this.
Yeah.
But many of them, they come, invest money, drill the commitment wells, and find no, like Shell, for instance. Shell is the largest oil company in the world. So it's a business that is not, it's not an industry whereby you have feedstock of certain material and there is market for the outcome of manufacturing this, and it's not like that. There is a risk inherent to our business from the beginning to the end. The end is the price. The beginning
But
is,
when it's going to be sold, it's going to be sold like hot cake.
yeah.
I mean, it's not going just to be for the local market. It's going to be for exporting, like the infograph, which was saying that in the petroleum industry sector, there is a leap. The petroleum sector's exports amounted to $13 billion during 2021.
But as I said, the price is very important.
Yeah.
And the cost of the process dictates the price. So now the largest market in the area is Europe.
Yeah.
And everybody in the area and outside the area, because if they're close, it's better to use pipeline. If they're farther away, then they use LNG, because of LNG is energy intensive, and pipelines, they're costly if the water is deep, and if they go through sovereign countries, they have to pay a right of way. So there is a depletion of the and yet it has to. I'll tell you a very interesting story regarding this.
Yeah.
The East Europe, the countries in East Europe, including Italy and this area, was getting all their gas from Russia.
Okay.
For a high price, because they go through Ukraine, they go through other countries, and they get right of way. So by the time they receive it, the cost is high. So there was a Nabucco pipeline was designed to get gas from the Caspian Sea and gas from Iraq, gas from Iran and Egypt. We were going to have a trunk line connecting to the and Russia fought it right, left, and center, and stopped it, aborted the project, and they said we'll make the Nord Stream and the South Stream and the Blue Stream through Turkey, because Turkey was angry because they were supposed to get 15% of the gas going through Turkey from the Nabucco pipeline. So it's all political. The geopolitics and the price pays. They play a very important role in competing.
And we are going to speak about particularly the impact of the Russian-Ukrainian war or conflict on the global economy in general, and on the oil prices in specific, in addition to the high prices of all commodities, including even food. But let's focus a little bit more on Egypt and on maintaining the production and exploration levels of natural gas despite the coronavirus. Of course, the pandemic had its negative impacts on the global economy in general, and on all in all fields of industry, including oil. How do you see the Egyptian resilient way of keeping our economy strong, and in keeping our standards of exploration, of manufacturing, of whatever you say regarding the oil and gas in this very tough period?
Well, as I said, for the gas in particular, now we're talking about gas, it's the price of gas, the infrastructure, and the political stability. And for the political, and we're competing for the same market with Russia, for instance. So there is a big brother sitting there watching us.
Yeah.
So we did very well, given the circumstances that I mentioned. We did well in turning from net importer to net exporter, of course, because of Dohor, and Dohor because of they were pushed so much and managed to do it in a record time, given the depth of water that they have to build
To dig into, to reach.
the depth of water to get the gas all the way to the bottom of the sea. And then they get it
To the surface.
To the surface and to the land. But this cost a lot of money.
Sure.
Because of the pressure, the pressure and the depth.
Yes.
You have to use robot and special parts that makes you queue for years sometimes to get what you want. It's not over-the-counter items.
Yes, sure.
So this is one thing. The other thing is the stability. As I said, the political stability. It was attractive for companies to come, and they saw discovery like this. So as you said, there must be more discoveries of this size or a little or smaller. But this was in the carbonates. And where used exploration in the Mediterranean was usually for the sand.
Yeah.
So this was very attractive and helped override the problems that we encountered from the epidemic and the price of oil and the competition. So we were lucky. And the hub. The hub, it's energy hub. It's not gas hub.
Not
and
energy.
it's very smart.
Yes.
It's very smart to make it for energy. And even the United States became a member, but only observer. But the countries around us, they make energy, and so you can get you can have refineries, refine oil and produce fuel, and fuel you can produce energy. But the gas has the best chance.
The line share.
The line share,
Yeah.
because many countries around the world, they decided to change from coal and fuel oil, the heavy fuel like to gas as a transitional time to eventually go for renewables because of the climate change.
Yes.
So the climate change had very important impetus in the formula, because a lot of countries, the only fossil fuel which is increasing in demand among the coal and oil and the gas is the gas.
Yeah.
Changing because of supply and demand. So we were lucky and to have the political stability. We were lucky to have introduced a pricing system, very versatile pricing system that can, because we get part of our gas for free. So if we pay a little bit more for cost recovery, and then the average will still be low, then we can compete internationally by building our
And
infrastructure.
really to turn into an energy hub.
Correct.
Yeah. But sir, before going into this Russian-Ukrainian crisis and its really negative impacts on the global economy, I'd like to ask a final question regarding Egypt. Here we are talking to the layman in the street. When the layman in the street listens to these reports and these infographics and speaking about being self-sufficient in oil and gas, and also about being an exporter and about being of the best when it comes to the Middle East or even Africa, to be also the gate to Africa. But he is going to ask then why we do witness some, even if it is a tiny little raise in the pricing of fuel. Why? Even if it is at 25 piastres per liter. This is something which may raise these questions. We are self-sufficient. Why we don't even lower the prices of the fuel?
At the end, we are a net importer of oil. And net importing, when I was working in the sector, we were net exporter. So if we put subsidy and alleviate the price a little bit for, then we will give the government less money. But now, because we're net importer, if we do so, we will take money from the budget, which can be used in other projects, more so, because we import, we pay money, international price. So if the international price, before putting the budget, they estimate the price, an average price, and put in the budget. And so if the price increases as it is now, then we will ask the Ministry of Finance to provide more money for other projects, for education, for infrastructure, for this and
Health,
that.
any service.
Health, and you know the pace in all other
And we
developments
know
in the
that
country.
we are now 100,
So if you-
110 million.
if you
So
extract-
overpopulation also
Exactly.
is doing a lot.
So the
It's
subsidy,
eating, our development in a way.
the subsidy was essential to be removed, because it's long gone, the concept of subsidy, even for
Amen to
for
that.
food. It's no longer there. It's a very backward and crippling mechanism to help the poor. The best thing which is being done now to develop the country and to
Decent life initiative to take
life
care of the
yeah.
low-income brackets.
This
Amen
is
to
much better, because I portrayed it one time, that the problem, a rich man is using maybe 10 times his carbon footprint is measured by carbon footprint. So if someone has got 2 or 3 cars and got 10 air conditioning, and because you're talking about energy, and travels to Europe, and then
He benefits
investment
much more than
the poor.
the poor.
Because the poor, they use the minimum amount of minimum cost to move, or to have one light and then turn off all the lights. So it's a spoiling mechanism, and it's 80% of the subsidy.
And contradictory to the word
is
sustainability.
taken by
we
people-
want to achieve on the ground sustainable development.
True.
And it was not going to be achieved on the ground with this disastrous
Very
subsidy process, which was not, unfortunately, intended to benefit the poor. Well, returning back to Ukraine and Russia, and to the global economy, which woke up after even having a breath, taking into consideration that we are going to live for a while with this COVID-19 issue. So we are going just to lift all these restrictions and return back to production. But oh, what happened just 3 days ago turned the whole story upside down. And there are already negative impacts from this conflict or struggle on everything related to economy, on the food pricing, on the prices of all commodities, of food, you name it. Let's watch the story in detail in the coming report, and we are going to turn back to know if this is going to have its impacts on the whole world, or to be directed to special areas, or to Europe in specific. No, the whole world is going to suffer, believe it or not. Right after this, we are going to be back.
At a time when the world is still suffering economically from the effects of the corona pandemic, the world woke up to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, as Russian President Vladimir Putin announced the start of a military operation in the Donbas region in eastern Ukraine, whose independence Russia recognized 2 days ago and concluded with its leaders a charity agreement. On the other hand, the research center at Bank of America expected that the price of Brent crude would reach $120 per barrel by the middle of this year, whereas oil prices in Brent crude futures jumped by 7.41% during last Thursday's trading to exceed $104.17 a barrel, as well as US crude futures prices by more than 6.5% to reach more than $98.8 a barrel, to surpass the $100 level for the first time since 2014. Russia is one of the most prominent oil-producing countries, and it is part of the OPEC Plus coalition that includes members of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC, and parties from outside it. Analysts warned that in the event of a partial disruption of Russian oil supplies, other major producing countries will only be able to compensate for this to a limited extent. JP Morgan expects oil prices to rise to $125 a barrel with supply shortages due to the war between Russia and Ukraine. In the midst of the crisis, the Russian attack on Ukraine caused a rise in grain prices globally, and the rise touched wheat-producing countries, which raises fears of significant repercussions on important countries, especially Arab countries, some of which depend on Russian and Ukrainian wheat. US wheat and corn futures rose to the highest trading level, while soybean prices hit their highest level since 2012, raising fears of a global supply impact. Grain prices also recorded record levels in European trading sessions, as the price of wheat reached €344 per ton. The start of the Russian military operation on the Ukrainian territory was quickly reflected in several commodities such as aluminium and gold, as well as international stock exchanges. The price of aluminium reached a record level today, which is $3,382.50 per ton, exceeding the previous record level, set in July, during the global financial crisis. Gold achieved its highest value since January 2021, while the Japanese yen strengthened its position against the dollar, and the Swiss franc reached its highest value in 5 years against the euro. In the currency market, the US dollar gained 9% against the Russian ruble, which recently suffered from the effects of tension up to the announcement by Washington and many Western countries to impose economic sanctions on Moscow against the backdrop of the Ukrainian crisis. The Russian central bank was quick to announce its intervention in the financial market in order to ensure the stability of the local currency. The crisis reflected negatively on stock markets in Russia, Europe, and the world, in a move that the Kremlin considered expected. This came after the Moscow Stock Exchange announced the suspension of trading in all markets to be resumed at a later time, after falling 14% in the first hours, while the European stock exchanges recorded a sharp decline with the start of trading. The New York Stock Exchange opened with a significant decline last Thursday, with the Dow Jones down by 2.30%, the Nasdaq by 2.74%, and the S&P 500 by 2.32%. While the London Stock Exchange was down by 2.5%, Frankfurt by 3.7%, and Paris by 3.1%, noting that the German and French stock exchanges recorded a decline of more than 4% at the start of trading. The decline was not limited to the stock exchanges of Russia and Europe, as the stock markets in Hong Kong, Sydney, Australia, and Singapore fell by at least 3%, while Seoul, Mumbai, Taipei, and Manila fell by more than 2%. As a result, the world markets were very confused after the sudden Russian announcement of launching a military operation on Ukraine, and price shocks in various commodities and currencies followed, whether with a sharp rise or an alarming decline.
Welcome back. Mr. Hafid, economists and experts in these fields in specific when it comes to energy said that the oil prices is going just to increase or to have a leap. One barrel is going to cost higher than $100. And of course, the only beneficiaries here are going to be the producing countries. And all this due to this conflict between Russia and Ukraine. How do you see this, and how do you see this not only today, but on the long run?
I see it's mostly economical. Well, as I said, the European market is the largest market outside the United States. And because the United States with Henry Hub, they have their own system and infrastructure and self-sufficient. in a way for North Africa and the nearby areas. Russia, they don't want Europe to depend more and more on Russia.
Okay.
They want to market their gas, shale gas, and they want to build liquefaction plants. They want, even they're thinking of pipeline going from Alaska or the North Pole to Europe. The western part of Europe depends less on the Russian gas, namely England, for instance.
Yep.
They use about 3% from Russia, and the rest they getting from Venezuela, from Trinidad, from West Africa, from the United States. Lately, the United States increased their capacity for LNG tremendously, and they're working very diligently to even do more. And so, with all this, the Nord Stream 2 going through the Baltic Sea from Russia will get and as I said, it's a price war.
Yep.
A price war. Now, because of Ukraine and the security and the NATO, there were skirmishes all along
the borders.
Lately, the borders.
Yeah.
So they decided to put an end to it and prepared themselves. Russia prepared themselves to change their reserve and central bank system to be able to be less vulnerable to sanctions that will inevitably be imposed.
Sanctions was going to be my coming question. Right or wrong to impose sanctions on Russia economically? Is it Russia which is going to be negatively impacted, or these sanctions are going to have their negative impacts on the whole world and on the European continent at large?
Well, this is the first time that the big powers have a conflict like this. Usually the security, when you talk about security, when doing so, Russia will be hurt, and Europe will be hurt badly.
Badly.
And the economy of the world will be, because with the energy supply and demand, Germany will get a way or another their needs for gas
Domino
from
Is it the
from
domino
far
effect,
away.
sir? Domino effect?
Yes, always, yeah. It's a domino effect.
Yeah.
And this is hurt and this is hurt. And we're less hurt, the developing countries, than if the conflict is with in Syria or
Yes.
Iraq or, it's good. They do it, the big countries, to benefit out of it. But
this time,
but this time, they're all
tasting
hurt.
the same issue.
And
they are
I
tasting
think
the bitter taste.
I believe that
Yeah.
they are on the verge of developing two parallel systems. It's being done in a way, China. But now China will unite more with Russia,
Sure.
and this will be the dollar now is at the peak, and the Americans, they are putting interests, they're increasing the interest, because dollar is a commodity. If they increase the interest, all the dollars will go back to the United States. So it's a fight, and the sanctions that will be imposed, it will help Russia to unite and to work closely with China and Japan. Japan will not
To the East.
the
but
East.
to put the West into a vicious circle, which they are not going to be able to bear.
Yeah.
Or to shoulder its responsibility in front of their peoples. But I'd like here, sir, to read a statement by one of the economic experts and to ask you to elaborate or to tell me your vision regarding that. Raising energy prices globally opens the opportunity for Egypt to increase its exports of natural gas abroad, in addition to attracting more investments in the oil and gas sector to increase discoveries and production. In addition to the increased demand for oil will increase the traffic of ships transiting the Suez Canal. True or false, or at least partially true?
It will change, not necessarily increase.
Okay.
But because there is a new trade agreement between the supplier of gas to China and Japan and South Korea, because if sanctions will prevent Russia from exporting their gas to Europe, then Europe will get the gas that was going to other countries, and Russia will export their gas to China, because they're changing all from coal, as I mentioned,
Yes.
from coal to gas. So the map will change. But I think Egypt, it's a golden chance for Egypt to grab this opportunity and activate. Because once you get a share of a certain market, then you work very hard to keep it intact. You don't give in easily. So now we're getting a share from the from Europe, which is our aim, the big fish that we all look for.
Yeah.
And Russia will, if the Nord Stream. Because the Nord Stream was going to make Germany get the gas for minimal price. And this is the fight, because Nabucco, they were going to get the gas to Central Europe or East Europe for 30% less than the gas which they were getting from Russia. So they immediately aborted it and fought for it and built the North Stream and the South Stream through the Black Sea, the other ones through the Baltic Sea, to pay less right of way. So it's all price war.
Yep.
And America, they want Europe to be less dependent on.
Of course, we wish that the war is going to end now, not even tomorrow, and to live in peace by all means. Well, unfortunately, sir, we're running out of time, and we're going to leave you with a promise to see you again in more episodes of our programs, because you're really an added value to our screen. Mr. Salah Hafiz, former Vice Chairperson of the Egyptian General Petroleum Corporation, thank you very much for your input, sir, and have a very good
Thank
night.
you.
And by this, we come to the end of this episode of Money Means Business. On behalf of my dear colleague Nermeen Nazim and Kamel Ali, myself Nermeen Abdurrahman, many thanks for watching. Stay tuned only on our channel.